of the business. I think a lot of us get really good at maybe at selling clients. Maybe we get good at delivering the work ourselves, right? Building the websites, doing the SEO, doing the pay-per-click. But at some level, you start to bottleneck because you're doing it yourself, right? Whether it's the operation side or even on the marketing and sales side of the equation, type bottleneck if you ever feel like there's too much to do and you can't get it all done and balls start to drop. In some cases, quality standards start to slip. Or like, hey, you know what? I think I'm ready to hire some people. I put some people in place, whether they're in-house, external, freelance, US based or international. And the quality standard just starts to drop a little bit. You lose confidence in what you've handed off. Just like quality, if that's been an issue for you as you've grown and as you've scaled, you're like, it's not to the standard I need it to be. Quality, says Matt, for sure. Yeah. So that's what we're going to get into today. Really looking forward to it. If you guys could, we'd like to get to know you a little bit. We got a quick poll we're going to pop up here. What stage are you at in your agency's growth now? Are you in the startup phase, less than 10K in monthly recurring revenue? Are you in the struggle phase, kind of between 0 and 10? Are you at the scaling phase, 10K plus? Significance, you're over 7 figures already, 83 plus in monthly recurring. Or are you Titan status where you're over 166,000 in monthly recurring revenue? All right, good. All right, so a decent distribution here. Some of you guys in startup, some of you in struggle, a couple of Titans in the room. Glad to have you guys here. Congratulations on your success. Couple at the 7-figure level. Amazing. We can end that poll, Justin, and share the results. That way everyone can see what the situation is. And really, in order to build a successful, thriving digital marketing agency, we've got to have a couple pillars in place, right? We've got to land clients. We've got to deliver great results. We've got to retain those clients. And then we've got to put the systems, the procedures, and the scale systems in place so that we can retain, right? So that we can grow without having to do it all ourselves. And what we've been doing on these sessions is really trying to walk you through those key pillars, because we know if any one of those pillars is weak, you don't have a thriving business. You've got a little bit of a disaster on your hands, right? And so sometimes, the landing clients piece is all dialed in. I'm landing clients like crazy, but the operations and the retention piece isn't there. And so what we want to do is really just kind of firm up those pillars for you so that you've got a solid business model to thrive from and to build from as you grow and as you scale. And ultimately, for those of you already at 7 figures, once we figure the landing clients, delivering results, retention at scale, then there's a whole nother level to go to 7 figures and multiple 7 figures. And some of us, really striving towards 8 figures and beyond, where, we've got to build the team. We've got to put the operational processes not in place, but we've got to refine them. We've got to dial them in, because oftentimes the team that gets you to 7 figures, the processes that get you to 7 figures, aren't the ones that are going to get you to 8 figures, right? You're going to have to go and up level the team in a lot of cases. You're going to have to go and up level the systems and the procedures. And so that's really what this is all about. We did put together a document and a resource for you so that as you look to build this and implement it in your agency, you've got a resource you can bounce against. If you'd like that, just type Playbook in the chat. That will trigger the team, whether you're watching this with me on Zoom or maybe you're after the fact watching this on YouTube or somewhere else. Just comment Playbook, and that will let us know that you want to get your hands on the implementation guide. All right, cool. A lot of you guys saying Playbook. You can also get this by going to 7figureagents.com/playbook-method, where you can grab that particular resource. So when it comes to playbooks specifically, systems, procedures, operations, if we don't have a standard operating way that things are structured within the business, we're going to face a couple of issues. A lot of times that issue presents itself in, well, this client got a different outcome than that client. We promised to do X, Y, Z, but only X got done and Y and Z got done, or they weren't done correctly. And that really shakes your confidence to go out and grow the business and land new clients. It shakes your confidence to continue to invest in the team that you maybe have in place. And a lot of times early on, we think it's a people problem. It's like, oh, I got the wrong people. That guy I hired in wherever, right? The guy I hired in the Philippines, or that person that I hired down the street didn't know what they were doing, right? They weren't capable. Well, in reality, a lot of times it's a system problem. Like you didn't have clarity of role, you didn't have clarity of expectations, you didn't have clarity of what you actually needed to get done. And if we don't get that dialed in, there's no way we're ever going to be able to scale. And so just type grind in the comments if that's you. Like at some point you hired some people and then they didn't do the job well, and you have to keep going back into the operations and fixing the issues and going back to things. Yeah, a lot of us are in the grind. And I truly believe that when we get our playbooks dialed in, when we've got the right operational procedures, and of course we have the right people running those playbooks, that's where the freedom starts to come into play. And so I'm just going to pull this up for you guys and try and make it clear. You guys are still seeing my screen clear enough that you can see what I've got up here? Yes? Awesome. Okay, cool. I'm just going to do one thing here real quick. All right. So how often have you delayed firing someone because you thought retaining a replacement was going to be too much work, right? I know I've done this often. It's like, oh, you know what? I've got that person in place. They feel like they're not doing it 100%, but to find someone else, to train someone else, to get them launched up, to get them rolling, would be too much work. Or how many times have you worked late into the night fixing things that you could have delegated if there were clear processes in place, right? The big thing that you'll tell yourself again and again and again on this topic is, I can do it faster, right? You know what? I know I could show somebody, but I could do it faster myself. Just type me if you've gotten into this routine in your agency where that's your default modality. And it's like, oh, I could delegate it, but I could do it faster on my own. Yeah, 100%. And so that's why we want a system, right? So type system if you're ready to put your system thinking hat on. Think about, how do we stop doing it ourselves? How do we stop blaming the team? But how do we really dial in a system so that we can hold the standards that we want in our agency? And so I want you to imagine if you had documented, repeatable systems for every part of the business. Onboarding new hires is seamless and they're producing great results in record time. You're no longer the bottleneck because your team knows exactly what to do and how to do it, right? That's the dream. So here's what we're going to cover on today's session. We're going to talk about the 4 essential parts of every perfect playbook, 5-step methods to implement playbooks into your agency, and how you can leverage AI to speed up the process and make building systems even easier than you ever thought. Type ready in the chat if you're ready to rock and roll. Just type ready. Matt says, let's go. Russell says, rock, ready to roll, ready to rumble. Awesome. All right. So when it comes to SOPs, and I guess just like when you think about systems, procedures, standard operating procedures, playbooks, how do you refer to that in your own mind today? Like, do you call it a playbook? Do you call it an SOP? Do you call it procedures? Let me know like how you think of it. Matt calls it an SOP. Colby calls it an SOP. Absolutely, right? So basically they all mean the same thing. And there's lots of great books on this topic. Some of the great books that we've studied and gone deep with are The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. This is kind of the original book on running a business as a business, right? Being the owner instead of a worker. And in order to do that, you got to put systems and procedures in place to have a true business, right? And while I love the E-Myth, it really didn't get practical on how to actually build those systems and those procedures. And so there were a couple other great books that have come along. Traction by Gina Wickman, Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. Have you read any of these books? Just say, type read if you have. These are common books. Traction's amazing. And we run EOS in our business. and the leadership meetings, the scorecards, the data metrics, 100% baked into our business. However, traction really doesn't get into the nitty gritty of building processes. They don't give you a lot of details on that. Two books that really actually explain this really well are Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz, very, very specific, very, very detailed. And then my all-time favorite right now is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Just type Dan in the comments if you're a fan of Dan Martell. But in Buy Back Your Time, it's all about how do we put the systems, the procedure, the team in place so we don't have to do it all ourselves. And how do we invest in whatever area happens to be sucking our time so that we can free ourselves up, right? That's the basic premise of Buy Back Your Time. And, Dan really talks about the SOPs in your business. You want them to be playbooks. So like the actual specifics of what's the play when we get the client? What's the play when we get the client on the phone? What's the play with how we run our SEO or our paid search? And so I really embraced that concept. I liked it. And, at Seven Figure Agency, we try to figure out how do we create a playbook prototyping process specific for agencies. And one of our amazing members, Chris Rodriguez, she runs a great agency called Grow Pro Agency. They're an agency that works with martial arts studios. And she grew from 30,000 in monthly recurring revenue to 100 in monthly recurring revenue, currently $340,000 in monthly recurring revenue in that space. And she took like the best of what she learned from Dan Martell, what she learned from the guys from Trainual, various experts that we had come into Seven Figure Agency and teach on this topic. And she put together the new Playbook Method for agencies and literally documented every single playbook within her business, did a deep dive training on it. And it lives as part of the main things we teach in Seven Figure Agency. And so I always like to give attribution on where I learned things. Playbooks and concepts, Dan Martell. The actual playbook method, Chris Rodriguez, right? Because she's living it. She built it for her agency, has had explosive growth, and has shared it with the rest of the community. So just type Chris in the comments to show some love, CRIS, if you appreciate Chris. And whether you've met her yet or not, she's a legend. So good. All right. So 5 keys to get playbooks in place in your agency. Key number 1 is we have to start with why. If you just say, I need playbooks, I need, SOPs with step-by-step instructions in all the areas within the business. If you start with that and you try and force feed it to your team, it's not going to be received, right? You're going to wind up with a bunch of Google Docs or a bunch of highly documented pieces of paper that don't go anywhere. And so we have to make sure you articulate the why for you as the owner, right? Because, it's going to help us systematize. It's going to help us be more predictable with the quality that we deliver for our clients. It's going to make our business sellable in the future. It's going to create mental freedom for you so that as you hire new people, there's processes in place and it doesn't just live in your head and in the head of the team members that you have. That's for you. But you also need to get clear on the why for the team, right? Because for them, that's their job. That's their livelihood. Why would they want to create playbooks that might make them unnecessary to the company? And I think this is where a lot of agencies go wrong. Like they know the power playbooks. They want to try and force it down their team's throat, but they don't ever get the buy-in. So you got to help them understand by having a playbook. It makes them be able to do their very best work every single time. It makes it so that if they were to go on a vacation or take some time off, the job would still get done and things wouldn't fall between the cracks. It makes it so that if they're ready to elevate in their role, like maybe they're the SEO director today, but maybe eventually they want to become the operations director, the only way they can level up is if there are clear playbooks so that it can be handed off to the next person. And so it's really important that if you're going to try and implement SOPs, playbooks, whatever you want to call it within your business, that you get your team engaged, you get them involved, and you get their buy-in. So specific action steps here on starting with why is number 1, communicate the benefits, right? No micromanaging, easier vacations, clarity in their roles. These are the things, and you want them to buy into that and accept it, and then highlight how Playbooks helps everyone win, not just you as the owner. right? Because if it's just a win for you, they're going to resist. Type me if you've ever had a case where you tried to roll something like this out and the team was like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll do that. I'll get right on that. And then they don't do it, right? Or you don't ever see any updates or any progress on it. And it's like pushing a rock up the hill, right? If you haven't experienced that yet, you will if you don't make sure to get buy-in from your team when it comes to executing these types of playbooks. Okay, so drop team in the comments if you're committed to get the team bought in to this process and get the team bought into helping you help them. No doubt. All right, number 2 is we have to brain dump all the processes. And by that, I mean, you can't just start creating playbooks. You can't just say, okay, I want SOPs. We need to brain dump what are the processes in this business, right? And for you as the owner, maybe it's marketing and sales related stuff. When it comes to operations, what are the processes that happen to be in place already for your website builds, for your content creation, for your SEO strategy, for your paid search strategy, for all of those different areas in the business. And you want to brain dump this. You can either do it on a whiteboard if you've got a team that's live. You could put it onto a shared Google Sheet and everybody's going in, okay, I've got this department, this department, this department. These are all of the systems. These are all the processes that operate. We want to do a brain dump, and then we want to focus on the 80-20 principle, right? The 80-20 principle basically states 80% of your results come from the 20% of the activities. Don't try and do this for every single micro thing within your agency. Pick the 20%, the ones that really move the needle, the ones that if you didn't get right would materially impact your ability to land clients, your ability to deliver for clients, or your ability to retain clients, and you start there, right? And so what we want to do in this brain dump process is have each team member review their calendar because they don't remember. They're like, what did I do? I don't know. Like, what do I do day to day? Well, what's on your schedule? Let's look at your schedule. Let's look at the emails that you've sent. Let's look at your to-do list. Hopefully your team is tracking, like, here's the main things I'm doing. Here's the main things I need to get done. That helps bring to the fore, okay, these are the key things. These are where my time is going in my role within the organization. And then ask them to identify daily, weekly, and monthly tasks, right? So step 1, where's the time going? Step 2, what are the tasks I do daily? What are the tasks I do monthly? What are the tasks maybe that I do quarterly? And just drop all of that out so that you've got a list of potential processes you can pull in to your playbook strategy, into the playbooks you're going to build. Type brain dump if you're clear. Like, I know this is kind of an obvious thing, but most of the time we want to skip straight to start creating, right? But we need to start by dumping the processes, dumping the systems, getting clarity on what the top 20% are that we're going to focus our attention on. Fantastic. Okay. Step number 3 is we want to create the perfect playbook, right? And this is really what you guys came for today, I think, which is like, what do these playbooks look like? What do we want to include in them? How do we want to put that in place? And again, I'm pulling from Dan Martell's Playbook Method. I'm pulling from Chris's Playbook Method. I'm pulling from some of the things we learned from Trainual and other organizations. But what I believe is every playbook needs to have the table of context at the top. Like, who's the owner of this playbook? What tools are needed? Like, is this something we're going to do in WordPress? Is this something we do in Loom? Like, what are the tools that we have to have in place? And why does this process matter? And this is really, really important. In the very top of your playbook, and I show a live example, we're going to get into it here in a minute, but at the very top of your playbook, what does it look like when this is done, right? Make sure that whoever it is that's doing it is clear on the outcome versus just the minutia. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with this particular playbook in the organization? And that answers the question of why this matters. Underneath that, you want to leverage the camcorder method, which is just a video of you or somebody on your team actually doing the process. And what's beautiful in the digital marketing agency space, most of what we do happens at a computer. And it's very easy to pull up Loom or pull up ScreenFlow or pull up some other software, hit record, and now we've got a long form recording of that thing happening, right? In real time. Hey, I'm going to do this. And the next thing I do that. And here's how I go to the next thing. And just creating the video. Yep. You can use Scribe How. You can use Scribe. You can use a lot of different platforms for this. I'm a big fan of just Loom because the second you record it, it drops it into a live place where it can be accessed. So camcorder method, Loom method, whatever you want to call it. And then below that, you're going to have your course, which would be all of the steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, all the way through the process. And then at the very bottom is your completion checklist. And the reason this is great and the reason it works so well is because the new person that steps into a role that's never done that particular thing before, they're like, I don't know, like, how would this even work? Can watch a long form video of it happening. And they can get really watch it, pause, do the thing, pause, do the thing, get really clear. They can visualize it. They can see it. Now, they're probably only going to watch it like that 1 or 2 times. After that, they have enough context in terms of what the steps are that they can go just to the checklist. They can go to that course documentation of all the things and go back and find the things that they missed. And then ultimately, once they're capable, and this is usually when someone's been doing something for a couple of weeks, they're not going through a long video every time they do it. They're not watching like 90 different steps. They just need a quality checklist at the end that says, did I do this? Did I miss any of the key steps? Right. And so having a playbook that covers these things makes it very easy to update and to train somebody new and to simplify the process at which your team does the work. And so I'm going to pull up one of these playbooks. That way you can see it, you can look at it. We're going to share again that actual playbook with you guys. But let me share my screen and pull this up. And the philosophy of this works whether you're doing this in Google Drive, on Docs, or whether you're using some other platform. But here's regardless of platform, here's what we want. What's the name of the process? This is XYZ. What date was it created? How often does this happen? Is this something we do ad hoc, like once in a while as needed? Is this something that happens every single month? Is this something that happens every single quarter? Who's the owner for this? Is it ideally if you've got a EOS in place, there's a leader for each of the different teams within your company. There's the person that owns this process is the person that does it, but it also is the person that's responsible for keeping it up to date. When was the last time it was updated? How long should this take? This is super important because if a process should only take 30 minutes, you don't give somebody that context, they might be like, well, I don't know, I'm going to spend 2 hours, 3 hours on this. Parkinson's law says an object will expand to the container that it's given. So if somebody thinks something's going to take 2 hours, it's going to take 2 hours. If they think, oh, okay, this has been time tested and it should only take 45 minutes, you're giving them that constraint. And then what tools are needed, right? And this is where you would put Google Drive or Loom or ClickUp or whatever platform that you happen to be using the tools for. So that's context up at the top. Below that, you've got the camcorder method. So the camcorder method is the recording or recordings of yourself doing it. And I'll share a couple examples so you can see what one of these looks like filled in. It doesn't need to be embedded. I know it looks nicer if you embed that, but it could just be a link straight out to where that video is hosted. Use Loom makes this very easy. Then there's the documentation. Like these are the actual step-by-step, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 with all of the detail. And then at the very bottom, we have just our completion checklist. These are the things, regardless if you've done this 1 time or 100 times, the things you want to double check to make sure you didn't skip a critical component. I know every time you talk about SOPs, the example of the airline pilot comes up. Like these are highly trained professionals that have flown for hundreds of hours, that have been professionally certified in what they do. But every time they're about to take off, what do? They pull up the checklist and they make sure they didn't miss any of those critical steps. And so let me know if this is helpful to kind of see what the playbook looks like in the real world. And or if you have any questions about this, I'm going to pull up an example while I see if you guys have any questions or thoughts on this specifically. Russell says helpful. Okay, good. So I'm just going to look for. All right. So this is, we train the monthly webinar method. If you've been following me for any period of time, I say a webinar should happen every single month, right? And we've got a bunch of stuff we got to do. We got to set up the promotional page, the replay sequence, the recording, the syndication, all of that stuff. Well, we want to be able to hand this off, right? So setting up a promo webinar, last date updated was in, September 25th, 2023. This happens ad hoc, but it's once a month. It's not an exact literal amount. Each month we run a promotional webinar to our prospect list to build awareness, drive new membership. This playbook walks you through the steps, right? You're going to need ad event, Canva, and high level, right? Because all the promotion happens in high level. Typically takes 4 to 6 hours to complete this entire process. We've got step-by-step videos for each of the key things, right? Setting up ad event, setting up the custom values in high level, updating promo graphics. So let's just say like, all right, I want to see this. There's like a little step-by-step video of that particular step in the process getting done. Then we've got, okay, let's look step-by-step. Like, where do I log in? What do I have to do on the page? All of the little things that have to happen along the way. And then our final checklist at the bottom. So that's just a real world example of the playbook creation template in place. So again, I don't want to get too into the minutia, but that's what you want in each of the different playbooks for each of the most important things within your playbook process and within your business. So action steps here on the perfect playbook. Number one, start with the highest priority processes, like the most important things, the 80-20, not everything. And then use tools like Loom and video walkthroughs and Google Drive to organize. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Is like, how do we organize and stack all of this stuff so that it makes sense. But just type playbooks in the comment here. If that's helpful, you can kind of see visually, this is what I want to have in a playbook. This isn't rocket science, but having a proven structure makes it so much easier. We're not trying to figure this out. For a long time, I tried to over-engineer this. I wanted to make it, long videos for everything. I wanted to put it into a fancy format, and just having a simple Google Doc with those key things made it actually accessible for me and my team. And more importantly, something we could easily update on a consistent basis. All right. The next thing we can do, which is pretty cool, step 4, is leverage AI to speed up the process. Because for some of us, recording the video is not too bad. Creating that checklist with all of those steps starts to become a little bit of a nightmare, starts to become a hassle. And there's some great GPT prompts for this that can really expedite the process. And so for the sake of you guys being able to see it easy, I'm going to share my screen again and show you some of those prompts and how you can leverage those prompts to simplify the creation of these playbooks. All right. So assuming you did the playbook video first, right? And we should all do this, whatever the thing is, whether it's you or somebody on your team, you created that video and outlined the process. So you kind of walk through the process. You're going to take a transcript of that. And Loom gives you a very easy mechanism to create a transcript of all of the videos that you record through that platform. And you just tell ChatGPT, I'm going to give you information about an internal SOP and process for plumbing, HVAC, SEO. Note and acknowledge, do not respond, wait for further instruction. This is really important because if you just enter, ChatGPT starts answering your question. It's like, all right, hey, I'm going to give you some stuff. I need you to hang out for just a minute while I give it. I'm going to provide you with video transcript of the video walkthrough I made. Note and acknowledge, do not respond, wait for further instructions, right? So you're telling ChatGPT, now you're going to drag and drop the transcript. This is the video transcript. Note and acknowledge, do not respond, wait for additional instructions. Well, you're going to wait. The ChatGPT's like, okay, I'm ready to rock and roll. The SOP should be formatted in step-by-step bullet points and reference, name of the process, right? How to set up your webinars with step-by-step instructions. Note and acknowledge, do not respond, wait for additional details. Oops. Begin writing the SOP with all of the provided information above, right? It's going to give you a pretty solid answer. It's going to give you a pretty solid response. The next thing you want to say is now take the main bullet points and turn this into a checklist in a question format that has only the high-level steps provided. So really what this is doing is it's taking your playbook here, right, and taking your video that you record, giving you the course description, right, which is the long form, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then it's taking the most important steps and creating a checklist. Is it going to be perfect? Type yes if you think it's going to be perfect. I'm going to wait until somebody says yes or no. Gloria, great to see you. She says, no, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you 80% of the way, typically. And so we can use the 10-80-10 rule here, which is give it 10% context. Hey, here's what I want you to do. I've given you a video of what I need you to create a step-by-step for. It does 80% of the work, and then we just have to circle back for the last 10% and say, hey, you know what, that's not quite right, or just modify it ourselves until we've got a really tight process like this. That's like, okay, now this is exactly what I needed this to do. Comment AI, if you can use ChatGPT or whatever AI platform you want to help you shortcut this process, to simplify it. Because this is detailed minutia. It's very hard work. And so what we want to do is we want to train AI tools like ChatGPT to understand your process and then use them to draft written SOPs while you focus on the videos and tightening up the checklist, right? That's the main thing. This can cut out most of the effort. And then step number 5 is we want to organize and implement. Because a bunch of random Google Docs isn't the answer, right? We got to have a tight structure where we can find those playbooks and we can keep the playbooks up to date. And so the way I like to think of it is there's ClickUp, which is like your project management system, right? Which is different. Then there's your playbooks, which is the step-by-step latest version of what you do within your organization and how that process is done. And then you've got training, right? Which would be video-based actual training of the concept, video training of the idea that you can use to educate your team. And so just to be clear, like this does not replace ClickUp, right? Because ClickUp would be, we got a client, here's the steps, here's the due dates, here's when things have to get done. And it doesn't replace actual training, right? It's just the playbook with the latest standard of what you have in place. We talked about the ideal outcome, right? We want to have a playbook that follows the standard documentation, but really what we want is a playbook for each of the processes in the business. We want playbooks that are live, dynamic documents that represent the latest version of how you do things in your company on a consistent basis, and that every playbook have an owner. That part right there about it being live, dynamic documents was always a sticking point for us because we've tried many variations of this over the years, as you can imagine, and started out with this really long document on Microsoft Word back in the day, and it was only on my folder, and it was hard to share it with the team. Then at one point, it was actually printed out in binders. That was completely useless. It just took up space on the shelf. And where we are today is very simply a Google Sheet with all of the processes, and then a Google Doc for each one of the playbooks. And the reason I like Google Drive specifically is because our team's familiar with it. It's very easy to get in and out of, and it's very easy to work inside of. Anybody knows how to go into a Google Doc and change stuff. Anybody knows how to get into a Google Sheet and change stuff. Some of the fancier systems, which are great, like Trainual and Suite Process and these other platforms, a lot of times it feels like it's this other platform that you've got to learn, you got to figure out how to get into, and then you got to get your team to leverage as well. I think if you can get your team engaged, amazing. If you can't, this is going to be the cleanest, simplest, easiest mechanism to house and to run your playbooks. Plus, it costs zero extra, right? I kind of like the fact that we're not paying an extra $29 per team member to get this stuff in place. And so what we want to do is have a Google Drive called Playbooks. Like you're going to have a folder inside your company account called Playbooks, right? And when you double click on that, there's going to be a subfolder for each of the departments: marketing, sales, And within operations, if you whatever you do, Facebook ads, Google ads, marketing automation, separate folder for each of those different departments with a separate playbook for each of the core processes within those departments in the company. And then you're going to have a master Google sheet that's listing all the playbooks, all the departments, and the latest of what it is. We currently have all our processes in ClickUp and have all of the playbooks for different departments in ClickUp as well. Fantastic. Jason, that's a great way to set it up. So the implementation piece, two things. First of all, you have to make sure that the team is on board, the team understands this isn't set it and forget it, right? It's literally, this is something that has to be updated on a consistent basis. Once something changes in the way they're doing their role within the organization, they would need to go in and, as the owner, update that. Like if Facebook changed something in how you gain access to the client's access or add it to Business Manager, we got to update that within the playbook. If you switched from running your webinars on Zoom to now you're doing your webinars on Riverside for some reason, obviously that playbook, if that's your department and you're responsible for that, would need to be updated based on that. You guys are seeing my screen now though, right, Tamara? Yeah, I realized now that you guys weren't seeing my screen. Yes. Okay. So all I was showing was just kind of like that's the playbook. And then I was also showing you can have a Google folder and then you got a master sheet with all of the playbooks linked within it. Implementation of this, and this is really where the rubber meets the road, is the best way to do it is to do playbook sprints. Because if you just say, hey, team, go create playbooks, and there's not a hard date and time when it has to be done by, it's never going to happen, right? And running, I think as some of you guys know, my agency now has 47 full-time employees and $7 million per last year. Very hard to wrangle the troops and actually get this type of thing done. And so what we moved to was a quarterly sprint. We're going to sit down, map out all the core processes. We're going to define, all right, you're going to run this one, you're going to run that one, you're going to run this one, and really map out who's going to do what. And then develop new playbooks, like what are the new playbooks that have to be put in place. And then on an ongoing basis, again, that owner knows, I got to update the playbook. This sits in my court. And then you should also do a monthly audit, like at least once a month, review the list, the master list of all your playbooks. What are we going to keep? What are we going to build? What are we going to combine? Do we need new playbooks? Is there some new thing we're doing within the agency today that needs a playbook? And then are there playbooks that are dead? Like they just need to be updated and it's time to go back in and tighten that entire process up. So steps for this, in order to get this in place, we're going to create the departmental folder for easy navigation. We're going to develop the master playbook tracking sheet, and we're going to assign those team members to maintain and update the playbooks on a consistent basis. So high-level recap, right? I know we're covering a vast topic here. I'm trying to boil it down to a very simple, actionable, like we know what we need to do with playbooks. We know what the playbook template looks like. We've got a structure in how this goes. I want to try and make this as simple as possible, but start with why. Get buy-in from your team. Hey, here's why we're collating these playbooks. Here's why this is a win for you and me. Brain dump, like what are the key processes within the company? Set up your perfect playbook template. Either use the one I've shared or come up with something that matches for you. Decide whether you're going to put it on Drive or you're going to put it in Suite Process or you're going to put it in some other platform. What we do is all of our checklists and processes happen to be inside ClickUp, and then all of our playbooks are in Google Drive. You could as easily, I think it was Jason mentioned, you could as easily create these as docs, but the issue on our end is those ClickUp docs don't have as much functionality as what we can do with tabs and interlinking and all kinds of fun stuff in Google Drive. And there was just some limitations. You could do it, but we like having it in Google Drive. And then we link the playbook inside of our ClickUp system. All right, so you can access those Google Drive documents directly from ClickUp. Build a perfect playbook. Use AI, leverage tools to create the playbooks faster, and then optimize and implement to keep everything as accessible and up to date as possible. Now, I know I've oversimplified what is a relatively tough task, right? This isn't easy work, but it's important work. Any questions on this? You feel free to drop them into the chat for me. But those are the steps. And I promise you, time invested in dialing in your playbooks, dialing in your processes go a very long way. And they will definitely make your business more scalable, more sustainable, and more successful in the long term. I'm going to pin myself here for another second. So type playbooks if you want to get access to the template, that playbook template that I shared with you, as well as a document with kind of the key things in order to implement this within your agency. Or you can go to sevenfigureagency.com/playbook-method. Tamara says, this is awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for your feedback. This is, again, one piece of the overall strategy for growing and scaling your